voi tutti buona festa, la felicità, la gratitudine, la gioia, l'incantesimo della festa del Santo Portatore.
Deo gratias, joy, amazement and gratitude to God and to all men. When I read the proposal of the dearest brother Giuseppe Visconti in order to formulate a reflection for the novena of the feast of San Giuseppe Cottolengo, my first and sincere instinct was to deny my competence to do such a work, while recognizing the great honor. Not out of false modesty, but out of a real and convinced inability to deliver a speech worthy for the occasion. Then I read and reread several times the theme entrusted to me, Deo gratias, joy, amazement, and gratitude to God and to all men. And the conviction came to me that this is my last chance to give glory to the Lord and to bear witness to His work of providence. Right at the dusk of the evening of my life, I turned 75 just a few years ago. It would be an affront to divine grace if I did not take this opportunity to tell my experience with the divine charity. I would commit the sin of omission if I kept silent, even in the doubt of not being able to fulfill the task effectively. While I am convinced of the intelligibility of my language and expression, I will set to work sketching out a speech on the theme entrusted to me. It will be without quotations of authoritative passages and without references to sacred texts. It will be a humble and simple testimony to the wonder of the Lord's work. Let me tell you a little Easter story from my collection, 99 Fairy Tales for Children.
Semplice testimonianza alla meraviglia dell'opera del Signore. Mi permetto di narrare una storiella orientale preso dalla mia raccolta 99 favole per i bambini. Rinto, angelo disegnato.
Rinto, an angel appointed to act as a guardian angel on earth, was seen one morning dropping into paradise. He went straight on into the garden. The angel knows perfectly well the Lord's habit of passing through the garden every morning. In fact, he meets him in an alleyway. The Lord greets him warmly and asks him, "Dearest, have you come to take something back? Or do you feel a little homesick for paradise?" "I have not lost anything, nor do I feel any nostalgia," replies the angel. "Then, how did you come back here early in the morning?" questions the Lord. As an answer, the angel holds out a piece of paper and says, "It is my resignation." Resignation, the Lord wonders. There has never been a precedent like this, and that a guardian angel resigns from his post. After a short pause, the Lord resumes, "Let me understand better than tell me what is the reason for this resignation." Pointing to a little child on earth, the angel says, "Can you identify the Rinto child you have entrusted to my care?" "Certainly," the Lord says. "I can see the little darling well." "Could you see what the little one is doing?" asks the angel. "He cries," replies the Lord. "And why is he crying?" insists the angel. "He is hungry," says the Lord. "Right," He is hungry, the angel repeats. It has been 3 days since the little 4-year-old boy has had anything to eat. All it would take is a word from you, a sign from you, indeed a thought from you, for the poor child to have a piece of bread or a handful of rice to feed him. What sin has the little one committed to suffer hunger in this way? It is a shame. I can no longer suffer this pain. I ask you to release me from my present task as guardian angel. I make myself available to wash dishes in the kitchen, or let me work in the garden or in the wheat field. All right, the Lord pauses again and then says, can't you see that your left foot is resting on a stone in the middle of the driveway? Someone could trip over the stone and fall on the ground. Since you want to work in the garden, could you find something to level this driveway? Right away, sir. The angel runs into the workshop, returns with a hammer, and gives the stone a blow. At the second blow, the stone splits in two, and a small cave appears in the heart of the stone. Halt, said the Lord. Look what is inside the stone. The angel gets down on his knees and looks closely. In the little cave, he finds some water and 2 little fishes that are swimming carefree. When you placed your foot on the stone, could you ever have imagined the existence of these little fishes inside the cave? Asks the Lord. And who provided the water in the cave for them? The angel was astonished. Forgive, Lord, my sin of presumption. And, hurrying back to the earth, he resumes his task. This fairy tale almost fully reflects our belief in divine providence, inculcated in our minds from the time of the teaching of the Christian doctrine. As good Christians, we do not doubt the work of divine providence, at least as a principle. But in practical life, what is our attitude? As for me personally, I must admit that the moments of gratitude to divine providence have been rare, at least for a good part of this very long life. I was born into a traditional Christian and strictly practicing family. I went to university in India for 4 years, earning a first degree in physics and then a second degree in medicine and surgery at the most recognized university in the world, the University of Padua. And so on, telling my titles or achievements or successes will result in a sterile list of boasting and conceit. They might sound as if Providence has kept itself only a spectator and even as accomplice of mine. And so therefore this aspect of the strictly personal facts I kept in a drawer under lock and key, and I think it more appropriate to concentrate on my amazement at the word of providence in the area of my public or social life. Before entering into the actual subject, it is dear to me to mention a principle of Indian philosophy that comes in support of my astonishment of the providence. This points irrevocably to our role in the work of divine providence. Once again, I bring a passage from my already mentioned little book.
Ancora una volta porto un brano dal mio libro già accennato.
In many Hindu temples, just in front of the Santa Sanctorum, you find a magic formula in Sanskrit that we read Tatuvamasi, meaning that is you. It is a word rich in meaning what can be summarized as follows. There is no need to look for God in the whole universe. He is in each one of us. The following demonstrate this. Years ago, when I was trying to gather myself in prayer, my mind was very confused, worried, and contrite. What was happening around me troubled and distressed me. Hunger, famine, disasters, riots, and violence of all kinds disturbed me, and I was constantly asking the Lord why these things were happening and saying to Him, "Don't you see what is happening? Why do you allow these things to happen? Don't you see the men are fighting each other and shooting each other? Don't you see they have slaughtered thousands of innocent people in bloody wars in Vietnam and Cambodia? Don't you see the thousands of children starving to death in Biafra and Bangladesh? Why don't you do something, Lord? How can you not see that the most basic human rights are being violated and every fundamental freedom denied, even in Latin America and Palestine? Do you not notice the atrocities inflicted by the armed forces in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Georgia? Why do you not intervene? Do you not see that millions of people are devastated by tsunamis, earthquakes, and floods? Do you not see that thousands of women are being brutally abused and raped? Why do you not stretch out your merciful hands towards them? I always blamed the Lord, accused Him of insensitivity. My prayers were more like complaints and grievances, and every plea ended with the question, "Why don't you do something?" One day I heard a soft voice saying, "I have already done. I have already done all that I had to do." I looked around, but I realized that the voice was coming from within me, and I asked, "What is it that you have done, Lord?" The answer was clear and immediate. "If I send you to this earth, is it not for this reason, my son?" Suddenly the fog disappeared from my eyes, and I never again asked, "Why don't you do something, Lord?" Now it is the Lord who asks me, "Why don't you do something, son?" Don't you see the poor people around you who are suffering from hunger, afflicted by disease, deprived of their rights, and overwhelmed by natural disaster? Now I answer, "Here I am, Lord. Your grace is enough for me." You see clearly how the principle Tatsvamasi turns the work of the Lord into a commitment for us all. The primordial fact of faith in Providence means that we make ourselves instrument of the Lord's work. It is too convenient to say that Providence provides everything. Indeed, it is an offense to Providence if we remain inert and insensitive.
La fede della Divina Provvidenza non deve essere presa come un credo passivo.
Faith in divine providence must not be taken as a passive belief, but is an act, indeed a convinced, constant and sincere commitment. Divine grace needs our collaboration to manifest itself.
Disponibili al volere del Signore. Dio ha bisogno dell'uomo per agire.
We must always be available to the Lord's will. Indeed, one step further, we must have the initiative to invoke the intervention of heaven.
Non si trasmette attraverso il legno o altri materiali. Anzi, un passo avanti, dobbiamo avere l'iniziativa ad invocare l'intervento del cielo. Il Vangelo si
The Gospel teaches us in many words that the Lord waits for nothing more than our prayer to intervene. All that is needed is our willingness, and Providence reaches out to mankind willingly, generously, and without fail. In short, we are the factor in the middle that facilitates the smooth flow of divine grace to the universe.
se non ci mettiamo il nostro impegno, il fiume
If we do not put our efforts into it, the river will be prevented from flowing smoothly. Having said this, I would like to briefly mention one of the many works that bear witness to our growing amazement and gratitude to divine providence.
gratitudine alla Divina Provvidenza. La fame dell'India
The starvation of India always remains as a stigma in the memory of all Indians who lived in the West in the 1960s and 1970s. The situation is gradually improved, and the continuous distribution of grains and foodstuffs was held in the 1980s and 1990s.
è stata garantita negli anni 80 e 90.
Yet, climate and weather conditions, monsoons, floods, droughts, etc., often create extreme hardship.
Eccetera, creano spesso situazioni
They often create situations of extreme hardships, most often affecting vast territories, throwing a multitude of families into hunger and despair.
di fame e la disperazione. La cosa più grave è la fame cronica e anziani.
The most serious situation is the chronic hunger of the elderly, the disabled, the sick, the handicapped, and the marginalized. When I started doing a mobile clinic service in the fishing villages of the coastal area of the state of Kerala, I became aware of the many elderly parents and women abandoned by their children who had migrated elsewhere for work reasons.
E donne abbandonati dai figli migrati altrove per motivi di lavoro.
And still at the beginning of the new millennium, there were deaths due to starvation,
Dei decessi per fame.
not only in the remote areas in the mountains or forest, but also in the industrial area in Ellore and Kalamassari, in the tourist centers of Kumarakam and Alapuzza,
E Alepura e perfino sotto
and even under the nose of the state administration in Trivandrum. We could no longer stand idly by.
Ecco perché abbiamo
That's why we thought of setting up a food collection and distribution network.
e distribuzione del cibo.
We opened soap kitchens for the poor who could not afford at least one meal a day. Sehion Uttusala, Sion Canteen for the poor, is an initiative of a group of friends gathered in my house, sensitive to the primordial need of man, and on the 1st of January 2003 we opened the first soap kitchen under a plastic sheet in the courtyard of a widow in Chirakkal, as we were denied access to public and ecclesiastic facility. But Providence intervened generously, surprisingly.
Provvidenza è intervenuto generosamente, sorprendentemente.
The popular enthusiasm and the continuous demand from all parts of the region were such that within 2 years we had to open 24 soap kitchens in the districts of Cochin and Alla.
Promesse sparse nei distretti di Cochin e Alla.
Local volunteers, especially housewives, have volunteered to cook lunches every day and lovingly distribute them to 30-60 elderly, disabled, good children and beggars who come to each canteen every noon.
E mendicanti che si recano a ciascuna mensa l'ultima giorno.
The public supports the initiative by offering to spend money, perhaps in memory of their dead or to celebrate birthdays, wedding anniversary and other richness.
Gli anniversari dei matrimoni e le altre decorazioni. Quasi subito
Almost immediately we became aware of a very serious situation that we come into contact with on a daily basis. The lack of food for patients admitted to government public hospitals in Kerala and almost the rest of the country, India. The sick are often very poor people and have no possibility of paying for food.
in India ammalarsi vuol dire
In India, to fall ill means to seriously compromise the family situation, especially if it is the head of the family who falls ill.
salute riguarda un altro componente.
But even if the health problem affects another member of the family, the difficulties are no less, because caring for the sick person means losing working days and wages.
Sempre è necessario trovare i soldi per la
It is almost always necessary to find money for medicine, treatment, surgery, and childbirth. But it is impossible for a poor person to pay for these expenses or to afford a meal several times a day. As a result, malnutrition and hunger have become chronic in government hospitals in India.
in qualsiasi paese democratico di uno
In any democratic country, hospitals provide both medical care and food. In the West, for reasons of hygiene, it is forbidden to bring in food from outside. And as with all other services, beds, medicine, surgery, etc., the distribution of meals is also provided free of charge. Why can't we do the same in our country?
paese è un diritto del malato ricevere il nutrimento
It is the right of the sick to receive the necessary food in guaranteed hygienic condition. Why does the government not take steps to guarantee this right?
questo diritto.
The culture of civilization demands attention and support precisely for the weakest sections of the society, the poor, the marginalized, the sick, etc. A paradoxical situation. If, in fact, soldiers have a canteen, in schools children have the right to lunch and prisoners have the right to meals, why is the sick person denied this same fundamental right? Is this fair? Above all, is it human? Isn't it the duty of the political class to create the provision, by law, that would allow this absurd situation to be unblocked? It saddens us greatly to see how little sensitivity there is among certain politicians, particularly those who have been approached by us in recent years to adopt a measure in favor of patients in hospitals who are left to starve. As I said before, the food supply situation has improved considerably in the country, and the government has a huge stock of rice and other grains in its warehouses. Yet, it refuses to perform an elementary duty towards the poorest, and moreover the suffering. Our every request for assistance has been denied in an almost humiliating manner, that we have resolved to no longer approach the government authority for help. And we are sincerely convinced that only a deep sensitivity can somehow be the driving force behind that cultural and legislative change that, by now, can wait no longer. On 18 February 2007, we ventured into a project beyond our capacity, relying only on Providence. We opened a hospital canteen in the courtyard of the parish adjacent to the Vandanam Medical College in Alapura. We undertook to provide around 300 odd meals to the poor patients admitted to the University Polyclinic. Within a short time, the demand for meals doubled to 950 meals during monsoon season and other natural disasters. The following year, 2008, we opened 2 more hospital canteens in Chertala and Alapura to provide 1,200 meals per day in 3 hospitals. In the last 14 years, we have distributed a total of 4.5 million hot meals to the poor and needy patients in these 3 public hospitals. We never dreamed that we would go on for so long with this collapsing effort if there was not a continuous miracle from Providence. We were always in debt in the rice, vegetables, condiments, provisions, and firewood shops. In the beginning, every 2-3 months, we would postpone continuing the work, precisely because of the amount of large debts. And we would constantly receive substantial offers to settle the debts from unexpected places of sources. By this time, we had lost the habit of worrying about the deficit account or the debts. Moreover, there has never been any complaint about the quality of the food provided. On the contrary, it is consumed as a sacred meal, not least because it comes from the setting of a church dedicated to Our Lady, Queen Mother. All the cooking is done in the open, on improvised hearths, almost always defying the weather. For 7 to 8 months of the year, it is a constant struggle against the tropical rain, monsoon. To keep the earth alive, to cook 60 to 70 kilos of rice and similar quantity of vegetables and condiments every day. There is a lack of adequate facilities to keep the prepared food warm and protected. The same would be said of keeping provisions safe. The distribution and consumption of food has to be done in an archaic way. Here, Providence comes to our aid once again with a completely unexpected miracle. Just the Sunday after Easter 2015, the Consulate General of Italy in Mumbai got in touch with me and asked me to look into the case of an Italian tourist who was in a beach place in Kerala in a serious condition. Talking to the lady in 5 beats, abdominal cramps, continuous vomiting, overt constipation, fatigue that does not hold her footing, and the story of a previous abdominal surgery, I make the diagnosis over the phone of intestinal occlusion. I rush her to Cochin to be operated on urgently to save her life, just in time to avoid intestinal perforation. After the operation, I make the acquaintance of the patient and realize that she is the professor of biochemistry at the University of Novara. She knew Professor Norris Siliprandi, who had taught me biochemistry and at the University of Padua in the 1960s. The friendship established between the professor from Novara and me was such that she wanted to participate in our charity work. Being the president of the Rotary Club of Novara, she found a way to involve a number of Rotary clubs in Italy and also Rotary International, and in little more than 2 years, we were able to set up a modern kitchen that can cook up to 1,000 steamed meals in hygienic condition. The Cottolengo congregation has always been an integral part of this work from the moment it was conceived. Brother Joseph Bengasseril and other brothers have always been the main promoter of Sehion Uttushala Sion Canteen. Brother Sandro Confalonieri and Frater Giovanni Morero have been at our side during their long stays in India, as well as Brother Lorenzo Gambalonga, for a short period of time because he stayed only a few months in India. Reverend Giuseppe Visconti has always shown his benevolence to this initiative and had always made it a point to return to our hospital canteens during each of his canonical visits to India, and it is in perfect line with their charism. I too have been inspired by the teachings of San Giuseppe Benedetto Cottolengo in carrying out this work. See how Providence works to amaze all our imaginations. Usually, reflection on the feast of a saint should highlight some teaching given by the saint, or the listener should be encouraged to put into practice the example of the saint being celebrated. I notice, however, that the reflection I have set out does not carry any such exhortation or incitement. I am reminded of another fairy tale from my collection already mentioned. Once, in a kingdom in the center of India, there was a famine of enormous proportion. It had not rained for many months, and agriculture was badly damaged. The arid climate caused all the rivers and even the lakes to dry up. Almost all the animals died for lack of water and food. And the people also suffered greatly and were about to die of thirst. The king, finding no solution to the grave crisis, went to Himalayas and began a severe ascetic practice to obtain the Lord's grace. The king immersed himself up to his neck in the water of the Ganges and stayed there day and night, without eating, without drinking, always concentrating his thoughts in the Parabrahma, the Supreme Being. Weeks and months went by, but the king did not give any pause to his penance. A great sage, the divine Narada, passed by and saw the king engaged in that impossible ascetic practice. He went near him and made a gesture of homage by placing a halo of rose petals around him on the water of the Ganges. The king, concentrated in his practice, did not notice anything, neither Narada's presence nor the honor done to him. But there was a little fish standing nearby who observed everything. The little fish asked Narada, "Why do you revere this man?" "Don't you see?" Narada replied. "This man is doing his ascetic practice in the most desperate conditions. In the day and night, in the scorching sun, or in the torrential rain, this king is always standing in the water of the Ganges up to his nose. Isn't that a formidable feat and worthy of deference?" "So what about me?" asked the little fish. "What about you?" Narada did not understand the fish's question. "What is your merit?" "I too have been immersed in this water all my life," replied the little fish. I'll stop here with the tale because the wise Narada's answer to the presumptuous little fish may sound counterproductive to our intent. My listeners are priests, brothers, sisters, and lay people professed to the charism of San Giuseppe Cottolengo, Saint of Providence. They live immersed in the river of Christian charity. They constantly breathe the air of deep faith in divine grace. They are all the true children of the little house of Providence. It would be too presumptuous of me to pretend to impart any teaching or testimony of San Giuseppe Cottolengo to this elite group of listeners. The only thing I allow myself to ask of you is to glorify the Lord and to give thanks to the Lord for me, for my friends, for our collaborators, volunteers and benefactors of the canteen of the poor. ask the Lord for His immense and constant grace. We trust in the Lord.
Costante il Signore per la sua grazia, immensa e costante. Noi ci confidiamo nel Signore. Devo grazie.